Once upon a time, in a village called Umazi, this village was very beautiful and surrounded by beautiful rivers and lakes. More than half of the men in the village were fishermen, and their women sold fishes across neighboring towns and villages. Neighboring villagers would often tease and refer to people from this village as fishers because most of them could swim even better than fishes. And this was no surprise because they were surrounded by water. In this village, there lived a young man who was named Obinna. He was a farmer and was very hardworking. When Obinna was only 2 years old, his father sent his mother away for sleeping with other men. When his mother left Umazi village, she took Obinna along with him. So Obinna left Umazi village. When Obinna turned 18 years old, his mother died, and Obinna said to himself, "I must go back to my father's land." And so Obinna returned to Umazi. But because Obinna did not grow up in Umazi, Obinna never learned how to swim. So on his return to Umazi, his father's village, Obinna became a farmer instead. In a few years, Obinna was established. His chi had blessed him, and he had goats, cattle, pigs, and a large farmland. He even had people working for him. After a while, Obinna decided to get married and fell in love with Uju, the daughter of a hunter. Uju was very beautiful. She was tall and had a well-rounded hips. One day, as Obinna and Uju took a walk, Obinna reached out to Uju and he said, "Omali-chanwa," this was his pet name for her. "I want to bring my people to see your father, to come and ask for your hand in marriage." Uju was excited and she replied him saying, "Obin, I cannot wait to be your wife." And Uju hurried back to her house to inform her parents. She was so excited. Uju's father sat her down and told her, "My daughter, Obinna is a good man. I give you my blessings." Uju thanked her father, saying, "Darling ma'am." In a short while, preparations for Uju and Obinna's wedding began earnestly. They got married and their chi blessed them with children very quickly. Uju and Obinna were so happy. One day, when Obinna and Uju were taking a stroll, Obinna said to Uju, "Omali-chanwa, since I came back to my father's village, see how my chi has blessed me. But since I got married to you, my chi has blessed me even more." Uju chuckled and replied saying, "Obin, we must take a gift to the gods as soon as we can to thank them for all the blessings they have poured on us." Obinna also told Uju of his plan to visit the big city one day. They were still speaking when they heard a boy screaming, "Help, help, my sister is drowning." Obinna, forgetting that he could not swim, ran into the river to save the little girl. It was only when he was in the river that Obinna remembered that he could not swim. But by then it was too late. He tried all he could to save himself, but it was to no avail, and Obinna drowned. Uju stood there screaming and crying for help. She was rolling on the floor and crying, screaming, "Obin, Obin," as she watched her husband struggle and drown. It was a very dark day for the people of Umazi as they mourned and wept all day. Uju was inconsolable. It was a rare occasion for someone to die by drowning in this village, not to talk of two persons drowning on the same day. And it was the tradition of the people of Umazi that when someone dies by drowning, the person had to be buried by the river bank. If not, his spirit would not rest and would keep wandering around. After some days, the body of the little girl the late Obinna was trying to save resurfaced by the river bank, and she was buried at the riverside. Obinna's body was, however, yet to resurface. They waited for days, and days turned into weeks, yet Obinna's body was nowhere to be found. At some point, they stopped searching for his body as they concluded that the big fishes had eaten him, or he had been buried in the river. 3 years later, in a big city called Onitsha, there was a young lady whose name was Anwole. She was the only daughter of a wealthy trader, and everyone loved her, especially her father. Her father had tried to match her with any of his friend's sons, all in a bid to ensure that she married into a good and respectable home. One day, Anwole's father called her and said to her, "Anwole, my daughter, the home you marry into is more important than the man you marry. It is good to marry a good man, no, but it is more important to marry into a good family. That is why I'm trying to make sure that you marry any of my friend's sons. I know their fathers and the sons as well. They are good people. You will be safe with them and well taken care of. Anwole, Marriage is an important life decision and one must always ask questions before entering it. The decision of who to marry is not to be taken lightly. I hope you have heard me, my daughter. Anwuli replied and said, Yes, Papa, I have heard you. And she thanked her father for his wise words and promised to do as she had been told. Anwuli had, however, been seeing a young man named Emeka in secret. She had not told her parents about him, as she was afraid that they wouldn't approve of him. Anwuli had met Emeka at the market on one of the days that her mother sent her on an errand. Anwuli knew that she wanted to marry Emeka, and that was all that mattered to her. Emeka was a trader, and he didn't waste time to tell Anwuli how much he loved her and wanted to be married to her. Emeka would shower lots of gifts on Anwuli, trying to convince her that he loved her so much. When Anwuli asked about his family, he told Anwuli that he was an orphan and that his mother had died while giving birth to him, and that his father had died when he was only 10 years old. He told her that he had no siblings as he was an only child. When she probed about his aunties and uncles, he told her that he was going to introduce them to her. And each time she made him fix a date for him to take her to go and see his uncles and aunties, he would mysteriously fall sick or come up with an excuse or the other. It became a pattern, and Anwuli got tired, but she did not pay so much attention to it, thinking that Emeka was ashamed that his family was not as rich as hers, and she decided to let the matter rest. As time went by, Anwuli's father began to pressure her to get married to his best friend's son, but Anwuli refused. She finally told her father about Emeka and how she loved him and was going to get married to him. Anwuli's father was enraged. He was so disappointed in his daughter. Angrily, he shouted at her, saying, What does he do? Who is he? Who is his father? Where is his village? Kebosi. Anwuli could not answer any of these questions. She just replied saying, I love him, Papa, and he loves me too, and that is all that matters. That evening, Anwuli sneaked out of the house to see Emeka, and she went to him crying, and she said, Emeka, we must do something. I know my father. If not, he would marry me off to someone else. Emeka, get me pregnant. That way my father will not be able to marry me off. Emeka immediately shouted, saying, Baba, let us not do that. Let's keep on praying that your father will have a change of heart, and let us be together. But Anwuli kept on crying, and while Emeka was trying to console her, they finally ended up sleeping together. 2 weeks later, when Anwuli's father discovered that Anwuli was pregnant, he was so heartbroken and sent her away from the house. Anwuli, on the other hand, was very happy because now she could live with the love of her life, Emeka. She moved in with him. In a few months, she gave birth to a girl whom they named Uju, and 1 year later, they gave birth to a boy who they named Obinna. Anwuli, after a while, was no longer happy. She wanted to be married properly like her mates. So she started disturbing Emeka that he had to come and see her father and marry her properly, according to their customs and tradition. She told Emeka that she was not just the Ada, but she was only daughter of her father and needed to be married properly. She also told Emeka that he had to take her and the children to go and see his family and his village so that they can know where he is from. Emeka looked for one excuse or the other, but Anwuli had had enough, and she was no longer going to take any excuses or take a no for an answer. They were always fighting and quarreling. After a while, Emeka got tired and decided to grant her her wish, so peace could return to their home. So one day, Emeka told Anwuli to get herself and the children ready to travel, that they were going to the village so he could introduce them to everybody. Anwuli was so excited. She went to the market and bought foodstuffs and gifts to share to Emeka's people when they get to the village. On the D-Day, Anwuli dressed herself and the children, making sure that they were very neat and beautiful. She also charged them to be of their best behavior and make sure that they greet their elders and only respond when they were spoken to. Excitement could be seen all over their faces as they journeyed down to the village. Emeka was, however, quiet. They would stop at junctions to buy snacks for the children. They would buy opa, aqua ogazi. They were eating, laughing, and happy. Soon enough, I only noticed that Emeka was not himself.
and all her efforts to cheer him up had failed. As they drew closer to the village, Emeka had become even more tensed and was even sweating despite the fact that the AC was on. In 2 hours, they arrived at Umazi village, and Anwuli looked around in awe. She had never seen such a beautiful village surrounded by water all her life. Emeka drove to the front of a very beautiful compound. Then he stepped out and hurriedly told Anwuli that he wanted to go and ease himself. Anwuli replied him and said that they would wait for him. After a few minutes, Emeka was still not yet back. Anwuli became worried and decided to go search for Emeka. She kept calling out to him, Emeka, but Emeka did not answer her. At this point, Anwuli became very frantic and started asking people if they had seen a tall, fair man, but nobody seemed to have seen him. She explained to bystanders that Emeka, who was her husband and was from this village, had come here and said he was going to ease himself. She told them that she had never been to Umazi village before, but her husband had only brought her and the children to introduce them to his family. When they asked for his name, she told them that his name was Emeka Mbielu, and they told her she was at the Mbielu's compound already. So they led her to meet the elderly man, Maazi Mbielu. The villagers explained everything to Maazi. Maazi replied Anwuli and said that he had no son by the name Emeka, but that he had a son whose name was Obinna, who had died several years ago. And he said, pointing to a young woman standing by his side, this is his wife. Her name is Uju, and those are their 3 children. He pointed to some boys standing by the side. Anwuli, on hearing that Maazi Mbielu stated that his late son's name was Obinna and his wife was Uju, she immediately screamed, saying that her husband had named her daughter Uju and their son Obinna. Maazi Mbielu immediately asked her if Anwuli had any pictures of her husband Emeka. So Anwuli dashed off to the car to go and get their pictures and handed it over to Maazi. Immediately he saw the picture, he screamed, saying, "That is my son Obinna." And Uju grabbed the picture, and upon seeing that it was her late husband Obinna, she fainted. Then it dawned on Anwuli that she had married a dead man. Anwuli began to cry and to scream and to wail. She wept. She kept on saying, "What would I tell my father? So I married a dead man. Chimo." Soon enough, the whole village gathered around her, and when they had heard her story, people had pity on Anwuli, and they remembered that Obinna's body was never recovered from the water, so he was never buried by the river bank. On getting back to Onitsha, Anwuli was very ashamed and she fled Onitsha with her 2 children. She couldn't afford to face her father. Anwuli went ahead and settled down in a new city called Nenge, and she started selling food. In 2 years, Anwuli became a household name, and she moved from selling by the roadside to owning a big restaurant and cooking for events and occasions, such as weddings, child ceremonies, and burial ceremonies. One day, she was invited to cook. Her friend had given her the contract to cook at a big wedding. She did not know the bride or the groom, but Anwuli was eager to make sure that everybody ate and that everybody was satisfied. So on the day of the wedding, she got to the venue early and set up, and she started feeding the guests in an orderly manner as soon as they arrived. In no time, the bride and the groom arrived also, but she was so busy catering to everyone that she didn't pay attention to the groom. She, however, noticed that the bride was heavily pregnant. Soon enough, the mother of the bride summoned her to get food for the bride as she was pregnant and hungry. Anwuli decided to serve her by herself, so she put a lot of meat and chicken and jollof rice to go and serve the bride. On getting closer to where they sat, she noticed that the groom was her late husband, Emeka Mbielu, and she shouted his name, "Emeka Mbielu!" He looked at her and vanished. Anwuli dropped her plate and fainted. After several hours, Anwuli was resuscitated, and she was able to explain everything to them, telling them that the groom was her late husband who had died 2 years ago and married her after he had died, that she had married him as a dead man. On hearing this, the bride went into premature labor and was rushed out to go to the hospital, and she gave birth in the hospital. 6 weeks later, Anwuli took the bride and her people to come and meet Maazi Mbielu and Uju at Umazi village, so that the bride would know where her child was from. Upon getting to the village, he explained everything that had happened to Mazi Mbielu and the elders. The elders, upon hearing that the late Obinna had gotten married for the second time when he was supposed to be dead, called for a meeting and performed a ritual by the river bank, appealing to the water goddess to grant Obinna rest, so that Obinna's spirit could rest and stop wandering about and marrying more wives and having more children. The moral of this story is that as young ladies, we must learn to ask the right questions when courting. It is important to know the important details, like where your husband to be is from. And in this 21st century, we should even go as much as knowing your husband to be's medical history to see if you are both compatible. I hope you learned a lot from this story. I would like you to share your experiences with me in the comment section and let me know if this has happened to someone that you know. Please like and share this video with your friends and family so they can learn a thing or two. Please don't also forget to subscribe and turn on the notification button. Bye for now.